Hey, everybody, and welcome to another episode of Eating at a Meeting. I am your host, Tracy Stuckrath, up here in this right-hand, left-hand corner. I don't know where I am. And I'm so excited to bring to you this episode of Eating at a Meeting with my friends, Lianne Mandelbaum next to me and Gwen Smith. Lianne is the founder and CEO of No Nut Traveler, and Gwen is the founding editor of Allergic Living magazine. And we are here to talk about how to plan safe travel for guests with food allergies based on or using their new guide, which is the Airlines and Allergies guide. So, hello, ladies.
Hello, great to be here.
Likewise, I'm so excited to have you. And I mean, we've been doing this for a long time. and everybody, we were very animated before we got on here, and I'm sure we will be animated in this conversation as well. But tell me what inspired you to create the Airlines and Allergies guide, and why now? Lianne, I know you've been working on airline information for 15, 16 years now with No Nut Traveler. So,
we wanted to give our readers and the population at large a tool where they could easily plan travel with information, because knowledge is power. And so we wanted to go a little more in depth. You see guides out there by mainstream media topics, they say this is safe, and all they do, quite frankly, is talk about nuts and perhaps what kind of meals are on board, which really doesn't help a lot of people. We want to know emergency preparedness. We wanted to know what specific policies there are. And so we wanted to make a guide that gave people power in their hands. And Gwen pushed me, and then I pushed Gwen. It was a little bit of tug of war, and going back and forth and making it the best product that it is. And I'm so grateful for Gwen and Allergic Living for taking this information and taking it 10 steps above what anyone else has done, and really make it user friendly.
Yeah.
But
let me just add to that for a sec, Tracy. So, some people will remember back to Allergic Living having a guide in 2018. It was well known, a comparison chart of airlines. But I think with this and with Lianne, we took it just so many steps further. And that was really important. And I think Lianne and I really collaborated well, but people need to know this is not easy research to get. This took months and months of research and then editing to, so it's, really, I think it was
years.
Over a year. Yeah. So, it was a long time coming, and we're trying to be as thorough and as accurate as we can. So I just wanted to throw that in there too.
Well, and I'm going to pull it up on screen here real quick. This is deltas, and that's really, really tiny.
Right. And so that's in the part that is called domestic, where we cover US and Canadian airlines. And then we divided, there were so many airlines, there's 27 now, and it's growing, that we also divided it into international as well.
Okay.
So there
are have that over here.
Many more airlines covered in that, and they're cross-linked, so it's very easy to find one from the other at the bottom of the and it scrolls up and down, so you can it'll say at the top the just loosely the top accommodations offered or not.
Right.
Sometimes it's not. And so and then you can find it from there. So that, and you've got the international one now. Yeah.
I think Gwen brings up a good point, the not. A lot of times someone will fly a particular airline and assume that because they were treated a certain way, that's the airline's policy, but in fact it's not. And so we wanted to have it in black and white. So for example, people used to assume that United made PA announcements throughout the plane, and I've even had that done for me, but it's not their policy. So I wouldn't want someone to go on the plane expecting that and then be completely aghast, or worse, have a confrontation with someone in the flight crew when it's not there. So again, knowledge is power. So you may very well have that announcement, but that's not their policy. So plan according to policy. And if anything else happens, that's great, but you should know what they say they'll do. And oftentimes I tell people to have a PDF of that policy. So if this is the airline that you're going, either get a PDF of their actual policy on their website, or go to our guide and take a snapshot of that and keep that on your phone, because that tones down any kind of potential confrontation by showing. You'd be surprised how many people don't know their own airline's food allergy policy.
Yeah, and reading your stories online, I can totally attest to that.
Yes, we can divine that.
Right, maybe you won't be surprised, but other people would be.
Right. And I think that a point, as somebody who, I live with multiple food allergies myself, I'm allergic to peanuts, soy, and shellfish, and very much anaphylactic. And, so I know that when you go on a trip, you've got a lot to check out ahead of time with restaurants, with with trying to figure out, in my case, I'm always wanting to be sure I'm near a health, at least a sizable clinic, if not a hospital, because it could be a problem. So when it comes to the air travel, it's really, we think it's really helpful, and I'm already finding it helpful. I'm using the guide myself, but to remind yourself of, and in some cases learn what the policies are, and to understand that Allergic Living, largely here, Lianne, reached out to these airlines. Some of them come back and they'll just try to give you a little snippet that's from the website, and that's really brief and incomplete. And Lianne had to go back there terrier-like and say, no, what about that question about what epinephrine do you carry in the emergency kit? So those were all important questions that you'll see answers to.
That's huge, because and the story, the epinephrine thing, I mean, going back and bulldogging, thank you, Lianne, for doing that. I mean, because we've seen by numerous accounts of reactions that have happened on planes, and doctors are searching for pens, or needles, I should say, and then vials that are unlabeled, right?
Well, sometimes there's not vials there.
Right, yeah. You
can check articles on that. I mean, there's a host, there's a plethora of issues surrounding that, again, so yeah, I mean, Gwen and I often talked during this process, which was really quite arduous, that it was almost like a game of detective, because sometimes they answer the question, like she said, with a link to the website, and that wasn't in the website. If that was what I wanted, I would have gone straight to the website, right? It's not there. And sometimes they would just answer a completely different question. And so sometimes I actually had connections on LinkedIn within the airline in the communications department. And then finally, after 8 or 9 back and forths, I'd CC that person. All of a sudden I got an answer to the question. But I really had to resort to some creative question and tagging. On emails.
We won't go on about the one CEO she was following, airline CEO she was following on LinkedIn, where she sort of CC'd him, and suddenly the communications person was all over the answers. So,
oh my gosh, that's awesome.
It does work.
It does work, and sometimes it's the only way that you get an answer. Right. And just going something about some Uncle Ben's rice. One chef was telling me that Uncle Ben's rice is not gluten-free. And I'm like, what? And I've told the story a couple of times, and he's like, well, it's not. And I went back 4 emails to Uncle Ben's. Yes, our rice is gluten-free. And he's like, well, some people can. Yeah. So I'm like, you have to go and dig. It took me 4 emails. You
have to get Uncle it officially. Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
So, and this was the airline, by the way, that did everything right. So I really wanted to get the information out there and not have to be anecdotal, right? So it would behoove them to actually answer the right question.
Right.
So that was even more frustrating. This wasn't an airline that does, that doesn't do all the right things.
Right.
So,
well, and it's not like you're pointing fingers. You're trying to provide an education and information about them so that it helps them elevate potentially their standards and how they
you
do
can
this.
see how someone who's doing it all right and carrying the right medication and doing training is not answering your questions. Imagine the people who aren't. They're not, you know, so it just is very challenging. Gwen is right. So
well, and I noticed and just because I had the Delta and the United ones put up, like under Delta, it says medications carried, but under United, there's not a subheading of medications carried. So do I assume that they don't carry that?
There should be.
I think that was was it one of the ones that didn't answer questions?
I believe United answered. They are the same.
Oh.
We don't, maybe what you're remembering is that they don't carry auto injectors. Both of them don't carry auto injectors.
Right. Yeah. It's under a different section. It says allergy training / emergency protocol. Okay.
Yeah, it is there.
Yeah.
I'm pretty meticulous about consistency, Tracy. Let me tell you.
Lianne will tell you.
I would say, in fact, it was both United and Delta, and I'm totally 100% sure of this because it flagged in my head. Both of them wrote me back on the same day after like completely hounding both of them that they carry beyond what the FAA requires and intimating that the vial is beyond what, but actually they both carry the vial. So they don't, you know, so
it actually says, Lianne, they do not include epinephrine in auto injector or spray form, which would be the Neffy.
So again, we had to take their words beyond and really investigate what that meant. Because I think the person writing it maybe thought that was the gold standard, whereas what we're looking for is a different gold standard. We're looking for an auto injector or a nasal spray, something that's easy and to use. So again, we had to take their language and then take a dictionary. In fact, you remember one airline wrote us back and we didn't know one of the abbreviations and we were like coming up with all these different like potentials for the abbreviation. And then the guy was, this is like how we refer to the crew member. It's slang. I forgot, you're not a crew member.
Right. We're like, what does that stand for? I'm Googling, but anyway.
Right.
But you do get some of that. I just want to mention one thing though.
Detective work. There was a lot. There was a lot for both of us.
Because we've mentioned epinephrine in the medical kit, it's called the EMK, the emergency medical kit. I want to mention to people that we definitely are for people taking their own, 2 auto injectors or their Neffy sprays with them. But we've seen a lot of instances where there's been another dose needed, or where, it was a first time reaction and the person, of course, isn't carrying an epinephrine because they didn't know they had an allergy in the first place. So, just a little side there to mention that. That's why we want to know.
There's even a story of a known person with an allergy that gave herself the 2 doses and then needed more from the kit. So there are many, sometimes people within the allergic population are like, what are you so worried about? Everybody should be carrying and it's on you if you don't carry. Well, yes and no. You could need the extra doses. I've had people, not even mistakenly, I've had people's luggage taken away from them. Right, at gate check, and they forget that their epinephrine is in there, and that happened. I've had a parent and a child go on different flights, but they were together at the airport, and the mom carried the auto injector, and the daughter went into anaphylaxis. We wrote about this.
Oh wow!
And where was it on the other plane? And that plane didn't have the right medication. So carry it. Don't gate check it. Keep it with you.
Put it in your pocket, right, or somewhere on your body somehow, right, so that you don't forget it in that luggage.
We'll get to this, but pre-board, so it doesn't get taken away.
Right. Oh, that's true. So, how can travelers use this guide, and have you seen travelers comment and use this guide before booking a flight? Have you had any comments?
I'll take the first answer. Well, so my son was at a professional tennis tournament last minute, and he flew out with someone he's been hitting with, and that person was on a strong budget, and they took care of everything. And I found out on the way back that they were going to be flying on Spirit. And Spirit, because of my work on this guide, is one of the only airlines left in the US that actually sells peanuts. And so he actually didn't believe me because, you know, most of the airlines he's traveled on actually don't sell them. And so literally I went to our guide, I took a screenshot of our guide and I sent it to him. And I'm like, you know, please.
Here it is.
Yeah. At a minimum, you need to tell the staff, because sometimes he feels pretty comfortable on the airlines that don't serve his allergen. And especially if he's with a bunch of people and they're all around him. So it was great to have, even for myself, that I went back to this guide. But I think, again, Gwen can talk to this as having allergies, knowing that your allergen is served, knowing what the policy is so important. You know, maybe it makes a difference to you that they will create a buffer zone for you in front of below. Maybe it's still too much a risk for you, and you know ahead of time. Go ahead, Gwen. I know that you have thoughts.
I would just say, go back to what I said earlier, which is the complexity of travel when you're traveling with food allergies. And the whole intent of this guide is just to make life easier when you're booking. So you can go and you can make an informed decision about, am I okay with the accommodations on this airline, or do I want to go to that airline? We know from studies that have been done, one that Lianne, the big one Lianne was involved in, that people are, you know, in our community are picking often first according to what the accommodations are, even before price, even before time of
wow.
If you can, because it's such an important thing to them to feel, you know, especially if it's a long flight, you want to feel comfortable that you're going to be safe. So that's really the intent, is to you know, I mean, we do have to sort of, you know, run a caveat that airlines, just like restaurants, can change something on you without letting you know. But we think for the moment, this is very accurate, and we will continue to try to update it at least annually. So
and just
it should be very helpful to people.
To add a little bit onto that. So while I was writing this, as we said, it took a few years. And at the beginning, Delta was serving almonds, right? And a lot of people were having a hard time with that. I happened to have taken a Delta flight to a tennis tournament, and I was chatting with the flight attendant. Oh, we don't serve almonds anymore, domestically or internationally. And so then I went back, went through my chain of emails, went back to the source, and sure enough, it had changed. So again, one of the reasons this isn't a written guide, this is a fluid guide, is so we were able to update this before this edition, but we intend on having multiple editions and having people check back, because airlines do change things, as Gwen just said. And that's the case in point right there.
Well, they're not serving almonds, but they are serving pistachios.
I know. I was going to bring that up.
Yeah.
That's important.
Which I have consumed myself. Yeah, but that's important to know.
It's important to know, right? Again, knowledge is power. We want to empower people to travel more safely, and knowing what the policy is, as opposed to anecdotal stories, is power. And then you make the decision, and then you know what to expect.
And let me just add to that, you know, I think sometimes people, in the bigger picture, the power is also the power to live your life. You know, I know what that's like. I get very frustrated when I see people say things like, well, just don't fly. I mean, who does what, you know, who wants to sign up for a half life? I want to go do things and whatever. Allergies are manageable. We just need to, you know, make sure we take some precautions and things. So, you know, we do the best we can. We hope airlines will continue to improve. I think another little side effect of this is that it puts pressure on the airlines when you know, if you see your competitor doing a lot in this regard, and this thing is getting well used, and you know, and people are starting to know one airline over another for their allergy accommodations, I think it's good encouragement for the others to get on board. You look at what happened in Britain, that really happened. And I have to say, it happened after a tragedy. It happened after Natasha Eaton Laperouse passed away on that flight to Nice. It was terrible. But, you know, it woke up their industry over there. And I hope the industry over on this side of the pond wakes up a bit more too.
And it would be nice. So that was actually a tragedy. Wouldn't it be nice if they woke up without a tragedy?
Exactly.
100%. Yeah. Now, and that was a question that I was just going to ask you. What surprisingly, or what's the biggest difference between international airlines and U.S. North American airlines with the policies?
They're a bit all over the map, I would say.
Okay.
Just before we leave domestic, with domestic, we covered US and Canada. Some people might be surprised that in Canada, on the 3 Canadian airlines that we profiled, Air Canada, WestJet, and Porter, that you can get a buffer zone. I can't remember if I believe it's just for peanut. But the point is, you might not know that. That's because their equivalent of the DOT had a ruling. So therefore, there's a buffer zone. For some, it's only 1 row. For Porter, I think they give you 3 rows. You have to ask for it, but they're fairly accommodating. I think some of the differences we see, the international ones are a bit all over the map, but I would say in general, we found a lot of the British Airlines quite accommodating, even the smaller ones. A lot more announcements being either as part of policy or that the crew has the discretion to do that, even if it's only for part of the plane or the whole plane, depending. When I say part of the plane, it would be sort of the area where the person is sitting that that they might talk to. But a lot of them were cabin wide. On for instance, British Airways will do an announcement for peanut, tree nut, or sesame. Like that's a lot. Yeah. So that's a big difference. We do not see that in North America. So that just things like that. But then again, you're going to have other airlines that don't make many at all, depending on where you're flying. That's a bit more UK focused. And I think, Lianne, you'll remember, but I believe a couple of the Australian ones were quite good too.
Very good. Yeah. And they tend, I think they all carry epinephrine auto injectors specifically.
BA certainly does. Yeah.
No, I meant the Australian one.
Oh, the Australian ones. Yes. Yes. I think you're right on that. So, but any other ones you want to mention?
The same way that airlines are, inconsistent in domestic and Canadian, they're inconsistent. You have to look. That's the chart. You have to look, because you can't assume even within the same country that the same airline a different airline, will accommodate in the same way. So
well, and just stories that the two of you have posted about, in airline reactions, right? Or, getting kicked off planes. It depends on what crew you have, right?
Yeah.
And, and what city you're in, or so a variety of things come into play, even though it might be their policy. And I love the idea of the suggestion of taking a printout of here is the policy, so that you have your backup, as the traveler.
Yeah, although the printout online, that's where we end up with the guide too, is because it depends on the airline how thorough that is on the website, or if it's even been updated.
Right, that's where the chart is great to take a screenshot.
Yeah, yeah. So it does help. I mean, both. I agree with what Lianne said earlier. Both are kind of helpful in that regard, for sure.
What were in doing all of this and making your phone calls, was there anything that surprised or stood out to you from the findings, either positively or negatively?
I was surprised Spirit served peanuts, quite frankly.
Yeah, I think we both said, I think I emailed you back, whoa, what? Still?
I actually think you said to me, well, they don't serve peanuts. And I go back, I think I sent a picture of the peanut M&Ms that was on their menu. And you're like, oh, like neither one of us knew.
Right. So they didn't serve them, but they sold them. Yeah.
Sold them. Yeah.
Gotcha. Okay.
Yeah. So it's a little different. That was a surprise. I think just things like I just mentioned with British Airways, I was surprised to see, that their announcement policy covered sesame too. I mean, you don't see that often. And yeah, I mean, and it's just I was hoping more people were carrying auto injectors in their emergency kits. I can't remember exactly who, but I know there was JetBlue, British Airways, I think
Alaska,
something else, Alaska, I believe, and American
Singapore carries auto
Singapore too. Yeah. But, it just wasn't wider than that. You know, you would
Right.
have hoped that it would be, you know, over half of them, and it's nowhere close to that. So
Oh, wow.
that was a little surprising in a disappointing way. Yeah.
Right. All right. Going to the pre-boarding thing, Lianne, that you mentioned earlier, the US FAA has the Reauthorization Act, which you were instrumental in
that's
helping.
not pre-board. Pre-board is a completely different case.
Different thing. Okay.
That was brought, but that is important. So I think we should stop here for a second.
Yeah.
And to go back to Allergic Living when this happened. So very quick summation is that I noticed a lot of people not being able to pre-board on American. They had a policy in writing saying if you had a peanut allergy, you couldn't pre-board to make your area safe. I started sending cases to Mary Vargas. We found the right case. It was a person that had multiple allergies. Allergic Living covered the story. And the end result was American Airlines was found in violation. And it is everyone's right in the US or planes heading to the US to pre-board to clean their area and make it safe. A lot of people don't even know that they have this right. And there's many reasons to pre-board. One is what we talked about earlier, that you don't have your safe medication and safe food, quite frankly, with delays getting worse and worse every day. As I live near Newark, I've experienced it myself. I was delayed for 10 hours at one point. I mean, if I had a food allergy and I didn't have safe food with me, it would be a huge problem. So getting the food and medication on with you, wiping down that area, which is just impossible to do thoroughly if you have a screaming child or a general pre-board where everyone's like rushing and, you know, so just getting those few extra minutes. And a lot of people in the United States I meet all the time, they have no idea that this is indeed their right and a right we fought really hard for. So I actually, when this first happened, I had someone Facebook message me that they were at a gate and the agent was not letting them pre-board. And I said, pull up the Allergic Living article, show them the ruling. And maybe we could give you the link and you could link it when you send out this podcast. And actually they changed their mind and let them go. So you know, again, knowledge is power, and having copies of rulings is important, and we can Gwen can as well, and then we can move on to FAA reauthorization, which is more about auto injectors.
Yeah, no, I love. Thank you, and thank you for the distinction between the two different regulations, because that was the
Department of
air
Transportation.
carrier, Air Carrier Access
Yes,
Act, right?
That is Air Carrier Access Act.
Yes.
By the way, a lot of readers don't make the distinction. There is no ADA, American Disabilities, in the sky.
Right.
It is all under the guise of the Air Carrier Access Act.
And that's really, really important to understand and get. And we're the only one. I mean, no other country really has an ADA regulations for disabilities. Is that correct? Especially around food allergies.
I don't think around food allergies. In Canada, it's more a human rights issue, so it's sort of similar to civil rights. But the problem with that is it's at a provincial level, so it'd be like being at a state level, as opposed to the nice thing about ADA and its relationship here is that it's federal, so it covers, you know, it does cover everybody.
Right.
I don't know what they have in the UK specifically on that. It's been more, you know, what we've been dealing with there has been more the airlines themselves and the actions that they've taken.
Right. Yeah. Okay. All right. So now let's go to the FAA Reauthorization Act, which has to do with, as you said, auto injectors, right?
Yeah.
Or epinephrine.
I worked on this for over a decade. Gwen's been writing on it for well past that amount of time. And this is the first time it passed, including language, which Gwen and I looked up yesterday just to prep for this, that we hope, and the word is hope, right? That FAA now takes this and issues, we hope, they have a 2-year shot clock since this passed. We hope adds to the list of suggested medications on planes an easy to use epinephrine device, meaning an auto injector or nasal spray like Neffy, or any other innovations coming down the pike.
I can tell you what it states. Do you want me to just give you what it states? Okay, so it says, I've just looked it up here on our site. The FAA must consider whether the emergency medical kits include, quote, appropriate medications and equipment that can practicably be administered for anaphylaxis. That means epinephrine, this is what we said, the first line medicine in treating anaphylaxis.
So we hope by that use of that word, practicably, if I said it right, we hope
yeah, it's a hard one.
We hope that the vials are not what is considered practicable. I mean, Gwen interviewed a physician many years ago who cut his hand on the vial. Was that Donald Stark? Am I remembering that
yes,
right?
Unfortunately passed away since, but he was always very worried about airlines and readiness for anaphylaxis. And he was trying to open a vial and there was turbulence and somebody was having anaphylaxis, and he actually unfortunately broke the top of the vial. So, you know, wow. It can happen. So when he was trying to open it
I also feel like listeners
will work with it. Yeah.
Listeners will remember, and we of course reported on this in a multitude of articles, that the Instagram doctor, Real Dr. Mike, encountered a reaction on a transatlantic flight, and the right concentration of epinephrine wasn't there, and he had to retitrate. And we've had that happen. We've had people find, you know, strange devices where they've had to jerry-rig. I had an orthopedic surgeon that actually knew how to jerry-rig a device because she was a surgeon, but also knew the concentration to do it.
Wow.
Because she was an allergic.
It just gets way too complex for the average.
Yeah.
You know, what if a nurse comes forward who doesn't have this background, or,
and listen,
you know,
I interviewed for Allergic Living, Kelly Hopkins, if you remember. She was a helicopter nurse. Okay. So we're talking about someone who knows how to give medication on the fly, pun intended. And she still pulled the plane to borrow an auto injector.
Listen, Kimberly Blumenthal, who's quite a senior allergist at Mass General, she pulled the plane because you know, she preferred to have an auto injector rather than trying to do the vial. And you know, so we've come to this, you know, where we start asking other people, might you have do you have a spare
and you know what?
epinephrine injector on you?
You might say, well, that's a good plan. The allergy epidemic is growing. You're more likely to have someone. But what if, like, you're Gwen and you're heading to a country that doesn't have epinephrine?
Yeah, can I replenish?
I
don't know.
Or you need a prescription yourself. And that was the thing. One of the doctors I interviewed actually had her child's auto injector, but she still chose to jerry-rig this device because he had a biphasic reaction abroad in the past. So she couldn't be left without another auto injector. Right. It's not like she was going to steal the vial from the plane to replace the auto injector she's using, you know? So these are untenable burdens put on an allergic population for a disease that is, you know, in this century, quite ubiquitous. So come on, stock the planes.
So this is where we coming back to the FAA Reauthorization Act. We hope they get their act together, and you know, and I mean, it's passed, but it has to get into the circular. It has to get done.
And let's remember, allergies are bipartisan. They really don't care
they do not.
Where you lie.
Right. What you exactly.
Believe. Yeah. So it's going to behoove all of us, especially with the growing onset of adult allergies. You know, it's not necessarily a child. It could be you that has that bite of shrimp on a plane. Always ate before.
Wasn't that young girl that was coming home, and this is 5 years ago at least, that her mom didn't know that she had that nut allergy, and she ate cashews on the plane, and they had to go back to where the destination. It was in Europe.
Are she thinking of Patricia Leonard and the cashew kid?
Yeah, maybe it was in the UK or Ireland.
The kid was 4. Yeah.
Okay, so that was the one I covered. That was Dr. Patricia Leonard. I think she's based, I believe, in Texas. But yeah, she was. That's where she happened to be a pediatric allergist on board. Like, how lucky do you get for that?
Well,
she was coming back from Dublin.
I spoke to her, and one of the most interesting things that she told me is that when she got back, she pulled her partners who were adult practitioners.
Yeah, that was in my story too.
Yeah, and they said they wouldn't have known. the dose for a child.
Yeah, they wouldn't have known the dose for a child, like, because
That
she
I
had
thought was the most
to
interesting
draw
part.
that up. But
Mhm.
it was the first the child just grabbed a cashew out of the mixed nuts in first class, popped it in her mouth, and next thing you know, then the parents didn't know what's going on
Yeah.
here, because they'd
Right.
never, had a reaction before. We had another case one time where somebody pulled peanuts out of the the seat back. Little
Mhm.
kids, they'll get on the
Oh,
floor.
mhm.
They'll be, anybody who's a parent knows they'll be sticking stuff in their face if you're not careful. So, or, just look away for a minute and look out. So, some of these things can happen as first time reactions that nobody's expecting. But yeah.
Well, and just speaking of that, I mean, I texted Lianne a picture of nuts that I found in the back seat pocket, right? And like I was putting stuff in there and I just happened to look down. I never looked down, and there was a whole bunch of nuts that had fallen out of a bag. And unless you
I think that there's a misconception out there that people with food allergies, and I actually was just looking at a tweet thread or an X thread the other day about people complaining about those people who are pre-boarding for allergies and how they're doing it to one up you. They don't need to. It's not a disability.
Really?
There's nothing to do early. And I think there is a huge misconception there that because it's an invisible disability,
mm-hmm.
and you don't see it unless the person is reacting, that they look normal. So they're getting something that you should be getting, and people get really, really angry. And you have to deal with that as well. And that's where education comes in, because oftentimes the flight crew is just as uneducated on the topic. I remember I went early in my day, I was invited as an Allergic Living writer to go to a Swiss Airlines breakfast. And they were touting themselves at that point as the allergy airline, meaning more hypoallergenic. I came to learn it was really not about food allergies. But one of the higher ups who spoke 5 languages and had a zillion degrees said, "Lianne, I want to help you with food allergies. I understand allergies because I have hay fever." And I'm like, okay, we have to take a step back. Like, allergies are not hay fever. It's not a runny nose. They can be potentially and lead to death. And, people have no idea.
Right.
I did a presentation for British Airways early for their CROs, complaint resolution offices. And a couple of people came up to me afterwards, and British Airways, they used to be the worst. They used to have the worst policy. I know Gwen was just extolling them. I will too. They are phenomenal. But when I gave that presentation, they did none of that. And I had a bunch of executives come to me afterwards and said, I just didn't know. And right after that, even before Natasha, they did change things. Whether or not it was me or the wind was going that way anyway, I have no idea. But again, it's education of the allergic population, that these are your rights and this can actually mitigate your risk, because you are talking about those in the back of the seat pocket. Easy risk. Take care of it. Gone.
Right.
So I think, part of this chart is educating, because a lot of people, even in the food allergy world and within the people that are booking your vacations, they can all use this chart.
Right.
There's actually, you could use it. You may not be the one with the allergy.
Yeah.
It may be your best friend.
Right.
It may be your spouse and you're planning your honeymoon. It may be your cousin. It may be your wedding and you have guests coming and you want to, get people there safely. There's just so many uses for this. It's, and again, I'm going to say till I'm blue in the face, knowledge is power. And we want to put the power so that people can live their fullest lives.
Right.
Why
Tracy, just if we didn't mention, because I'm not sure we did, the pre-boarding, for anybody who isn't aware of that, is so that you can wipe down your seat area for, exactly, you were mentioning the, for instance, tree nut residue or whatever. But, if you're going to be sitting there and maybe it's you or your child who has the food allergy, just so you can thoroughly wipe the area before everybody else boards. It's a lot harder to do once other people are on, and they don't look at you so odd ever since COVID if they just think you're a germophile, but it's certainly very helpful to do.
It also
and it's a right we can use now.
It puts the power back in your hands. Is it right? You are not reliant on the airline. You are not reliant on the passenger. You can't change if someone was eating your allergen for you. that you can get on and proactively clean and mitigate your
Right.
risk. And that is power. And that makes you
Yep.
safer. And that makes you able to travel with a lessened percentage of getting a reaction. So again, what Gwen said.
Less anxiety.
Yeah. Well,
It's
and
under
I need to say that the peanuts that I found were on a Delta flight, and Delta doesn't serve peanuts. So it was somebody who had brought peanuts, and there was not an announcement or anything, but I just noticed it. But so it was, again, because somebody else brought it on and ate them, which is their right to do.
Yeah. Well, Allergic Living did an article. You could also Google it a couple of years ago. It wasn't one. I think Gwen may have written it or somebody else. That Mayo Clinic found traces of peanuts on tray tables in airlines, even on airlines that didn't serve it. Right. So I mean,
they did a little study.
Shows you the need to pre-board, no matter what your allergen is.
Yeah. Right. Exactly. Yeah. 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 So, like, I'm thinking too, because one of my questions that I sent you guys in advance too is like meeting planners and travel agents, right? I'm like there are events that are like, if you and I, the three of us, were going to go to a conference and we're going to book our own flights, right? But what if we want an incentive trip? That they're going to have a travel agency book my flight to that incentive trip, right? So I want that person to have this guide to understand and know that when they're booking things, because I'm also very concerned at meeting planners not asking that question before they're booking that ticket, because it does play, like I said in the description here, like when you go to a meeting, eating starts before you actually get to the meeting. It starts on the plane, especially for an
eating pre-meeting.
Right, exactly.
It's a whole other podcast.
Yeah,
right.
But I think
we were talking about this yesterday, and wouldn't it be wonderful if you were the event planner and you knew it was an airline that was going to be a long haul, and because you've been following us, and I'm not sure if we'll get to this in this question, but we can certainly get to it somewhere else. No one with a food allergy should ever take an airline meal. We have a great investigative report on that. And we say it over and over and over in the chart. And it's no accident that we say it over and over and over again, because we want to drill it into people's heads that it's not safe, no matter the guarantees. So wouldn't it be wonderful if that meeting planner put together a goodie bag for you on the plane in case you got stuck of non-perishables? I mean, there are things, wouldn't that allergic traveler guest be more willing to use your services again, because you made this extra step that probably costs you very little but means so very much? Go ahead, Gwen. I know I interrupted you.
Oh, I just was going to say that I think probably I'm not sure what they do as event planners with these type of clients, but I would assume they have some kind of form where they're asking you some questions before they go do their booking. I think it's important that food allergies be one of those, and that they be aware of some of the rights and the risks. So the your person may have the right to get on and pre-board and wipe down that area before sitting. Maybe they have a bit of sometimes a bit of a buddy system, depending if it's adults or kids. Sometimes it's a school, like a college trip or something like that. And is there someone who's a good friend who can be sitting next to who knows how to use an auto injector or something? Just some of those things that they really need to be aware of. And as Lianne says, they could use the guide to sort of weed out, like, oh, I've got a young person here who has severe anaphylaxis. Maybe this might be the airline to go with, because we could go with either here. So it might be just a good consideration to have. But I love the goodie bag idea. That would be great.
Yeah, I do too. I love that. And, just from personal experience too, like when you ask for a personalized plate, or the specialized plate because you have an allergy, there's nothing on that box that tells the flight attendant anything, right? It just says my name.
We need to digress here just for a second. So our most recent article on Allergic Living was a pediatric ER doctor from NYU who was flying home, and she asked for a meal. The staff was well aware of her shrimp allergy, and they gave her a meal with shrimp, and she almost died. They had to divert the plane. She went to 2 different hospitals, and there's a couple of pearls in the story. Never take an airline meal. Not only because of what you're talking about, and I'll get back to that, because It doesn't even matter if there is a label. But let's just get back to the fact that flight attendants are highly intelligent individuals, have so much responsibility these days.
Mm-hmm.
And food allergies is just not necessarily, especially of education. If you read our chart on what crew is, again, you get the stark knowledge that most crews are not being trained on what anaphylaxis is. We're lucky if they know where it is in the kit. We are, even British Airways, they have the auto injector, but when Natasha was dying, I'll never forget that the junior doctor who was treating her asked a crew member to drop a vial of epinephrine. And the crew member said, "I'm sorry, I am not able to do that." But the tragedy was that most likely British Airways already carried auto injectors and they had one. And it's not enough to have it. You need to know that it's there, what it's used for, and to give someone an emergency. Even if you yourself are not allowed to use it, you need to know where it is. And if you read our guide, you will see that this is not happening. So we have a lot of work to do there. But this flight attendant made a mistake and gave the wrong meal. And to me,
this was the woman with shrimp. Yeah.
Yeah. There is no meal up in the air that is worth that. None.
No.
I mean, nobody dined on shrimp on any airline worldwide, even in the best class, and said, "I can't wait to dine there again and have their shrimp dish." It's just, we did an investigative report, and the FDA told me that it's the same thing as when you go out to a restaurant. The label can be incomplete. So Allergic Living
totally
interviewed someone who had pasta with red sauce sent to us by Dr. Anya Nowak at NYU. And this patient of hers, it said wheat, it said egg, it said milk, it said nothing about tree nuts. And guess what? It doesn't have to, even it's the top 8. And now we label for in the United States. But it didn't have to say it. And she went into anaphylaxis. So those labels don't have to be complete. So a flight attendant may well-intentionally tell you, I mean, that's not a word, I don't know how I said that, but they may tell you that it's okay and show you the label. And even if they show you the label, you shouldn't take it. And you could talk as to yourself flying with a food allergy.
Well, I don't take the food. I mean, some people will, we do our best to say in the guide, we say what they do make available, but we remind people that it may not be safe. But we do say, for instance, if you're dairy allergic or gluten-free, depending on whether you're as worried as someone else about cross contact, they do offer some meals. But again, these are in they're usually mass produced in big catering companies, and they could be doing more. That's almost more your area, Tracy, to prevent the cross contact. But the question is, are they? And if they would start doing that and could communicate that, then we might be and then we could get labels that were trusted. We might be somewhere along the lines where we could trust
very
food,
far from that.
but we are very far from that. And right now,
100%,
so it's an issue, and that's why I don't trust the meal. It does get tricky sometimes when you're traveling, as Lianne and I have discussed in past. It's easier on the way out, but on the way back, that's sometimes when it's a little harder to get your safe meal to go, because you're out and about. But you can usually go no matter where you are and get some safe food from a grocery store and make yourself a little something to take along, but or take something non-perishable.
That's when we traveled to Africa, we brought cereal, and
that's a good point. Yeah,
we asked for milk on the plane, and so just to be prepared, again, delays, and for the fact that you shouldn't be eating on the plane. So people get upset if they go to a certain ticket and they're not getting their meal. Don't get upset about this. The trip is about memories, the destination. It's not about
absolutely. I'm not there on the plane for the fine dining.
And neither
this is not
about the allergies. It's not fine dining. I don't care how good they say they are. It's a simple risk versus reward. And just to go back to the gluten-free and the vegan, the FDA actually told me that vegan was a completely made-up term and they don't regulate it at all. So I have people sending me pictures of vegan meals on planes with egg, with butter. Well, that's why it's a made-up term. And so if somebody does get sick from that vegan meal, no one's responsible because there's no onus on them.
Right. Well, and vegan is not deemed a medical condition.
But you may think if a meal is vegan that it's safe for someone with a dairy allergy. A lot of people.
Well, we've had stories of people in restaurants, that dairy vegan did not mean dairy free, or didn't mean egg free. Usually means egg free, but occasionally,
Again, that's
that woman in the UK that had the anaphylactic reaction going to a vegan restaurant. And she was allergic to dairy.
Surprised.
Right.
Yeah.
It's mind-boggling. Okay, we could just talk about this forever, and I would love to, but I think you guys have provided such a great resource here, and I will make sure that I share it out to all my meeting planner friends, et cetera, and travel agents, because it's a good start to figure out how you should travel, right?
And I think it's at the booking stage, where it's really critical. And like I say, if that simplifies the rest of the travel, because there are other things that you're going to need to check out.
Right.
Fantastic. That's why we did all that work, so that people would have this and be able to take a quick look before they go say, okay, what works for the days I'm going and the time I'm going. But these look like maybe my top 2-3 airlines on this trip to Europe. So that'd be great.
I also think that it's important to know, again, what airlines are not doing. It may surprise you that an airline like Emirates, that is known for luxury, will do nothing. And in fact, I think Gwen and I were discussing this. This is because luxury is often associated with the business class experience, which is associated with the warm nuts. It just
yes.
is.
Yeah.
And I believe when I want to make sure to your audience that even if what we've put in the chart is about nuts, that's because that's all the airline has in their policy. We certainly asked about all food allergies, and we certainly used the word food allergy. But I think the reason that nuts get so much attention is because in the air, nuts are synonymous with, or linked to a business class experience. And so often you'll encounter more in the air than you would on the ground, with the exception of baseball parks. So please know that, we weren't making this chart nut specific. We really do want all airlines to start respecting all food allergies. And again, as Gwen said earlier, we hope they'll take a look at what some of their competitors are doing, and also look at some of the research, like the study I was involved in out of Northwestern, and see that people are choosing based upon good policies, what medications are carried. See that food allergy consumers are growing. We're growing globally, and you can make money off of us. And you're loyal customers in a world that's
incredibly loyal. Yeah.
And while other people may not be repeat flyers because they're looking for this special and that special, we tend to stay safe within the realm of which airlines are treating us well. So use us for that.
Right.
Institute policies that are fair and easy to promulgate throughout your fleet. One day you're not going to have a choice. I'm here to tell you that. One day I will just be stepping off the soapbox, because there will be the epidemic is growing. We don't have good reasons, and the business class travelers will have allergies, and it will then dictate what the policies are. We're seeing that trickle in slowly. So I think those airlines that do it right now are forward thinking and have their finger on the pulse. What do you think, Gwen?
Absolutely, they are. And I do think there are signs of things growing. I mean, I was surprised a little bit to the number of domestic airlines adopting pre-boarding. I mean, I know there was a ruling, but they don't always jump up and, it's not guaranteed that way, but a lot more are. And the ruling, just by the way, is supposed to be all food allergies generally, but not all airlines will offer it for all. So again, that's where the guide will specify whether it's general or more specific. But yeah, I mean, I think we just have to keep pushing, and the fact that we can get some policy information is great, but we still need so much more standardization in this industry when it comes to allergies. This is, as Lianne's saying, this is a major, epidemic of disease. It's not catchy, but it certainly seems almost like it is the way
we're not recruiting and yet
the numbers of people,
right?
Huh?
Right. Yeah, we're definitely not recruiting.
And yet we're growing.
No. Sorry, you joined our club is sort of the the standard, but I mean, doing this work, I'm sure we all do this. Like, it's stunning. It's the moment I say what I do for, as work and as a passion, the number of people I meet who have the exact same concerns as something with an allergy. So try to help those folks.
Well, and I did an event. I managed food and beverage for an event last month. I think it was last month, or in June. And we had 128 people who had dietary restrictions. And I had one man come up to me multiple times while I was there, his shellfish allergy. And he had emailed me before. He's like, thank you so much. Nobody has ever taken my allergy seriously before. And he was in his late 50s, early 60s. And he said to me multiple times to my face, thank you so much for taking such concern about this. And I mean, that's 100. I mean, he's one of 128 people out of, I think it was a conference of 1,200. That's 10% of your group, and they're probably not even all the ones that told you, right? So it is there.
I just think of the immense gratitude you get for something that probably didn't take you very long to do, and that's what I'm saying. Not just to event planners, but to anyone who hosts anyone in any sort of gathering whatsoever,
where there's food,
which is everything from birth to funeral, right? Everything in between. Without meals, and you can do this much and change somebody's whole perspective and give them the gift of being able to safely eat amongst their peers or friends or even family. And so educate yourself, share this guide with family members that have allergies that may not be aware of it, no matter what profession you're in. I think everyone could benefit from this.
I'm going to put the links to them. At least I'll put one of them up here just so because it's a long link. But and you can just go to allergicliving.com and look for the Airlines Allergies guide and get the links.
If you click on this, if I'm not mistaken, Gwen, there's a link at the end of it to the international guide. Correct?
Absolutely. There is.
Yeah. And I have both of them. I'll post them both so everybody can get them. But
and I do think everyone should look for the meals article, because it's great that I'm up here telling you not to take the meal, but read what the FDA has to say.
And we do link to that through throughout the guide at the end, where we often asterisk meals that they are offering, and we say that at the end that we don't recommend taking the meal, but we tell people what's offered because people like to make their own decisions. So
well, and if you've got a long haul flight, you've got to figure out how you can do and what you're going to do, and what you're going to eat. If it's 16 hours in a plane, you need to figure something out. So
and
it's really important.
If you're gluten free, that might be a different story, because maybe what you're being served is under 20 ppm, and maybe that's okay for you if you have celiac disease. But we don't recommend that either, but just saying, if it's in your comfort zone, we'll leave it to you.
I just want to not encourage people to figure out what the gluten
I don't,
because even in first class, when they put that roll, it goes back to doesn't it like that fresh label. It could be a gluten filled. It could actually have gluten in it, and the airline may not know. So allergy or intolerance, my fast advice is don't take the meal.
And my fast advice is get to that grocery store, get your non-perishable to take with you, and you will have it even for the return flight, even for the great long flight.
Just remember all the great meals that you either cooked yourself or made in that country, and all the ones you're going to have when you land. even if it's a 16-hour flight,
Right.
it's less than a day. Does that really, is it worth a reaction?
No.
I'm sure if you talk to the ER doctor who herself didn't know not to take that meal, was it worth it? Was it worth it to have that airline meal? Right? It's just, it's not.
No, it's not. Yeah.
But if you're not educated to what the loopholes are and the lack of training, then you might make a different decision. So again, we want people to make decisions with knowledge.
Yeah, informed. Yeah.
Okay, I want to do a couple of rapid fire questions. When you're booking your ticket, are you a window or aisle seat or middle?
I'll let Gwen take this.
I don't think it really matters. I'm an aisle person. I know some of the allergists will suggest the window, saying under the sense that you're a little more separated from the aisle. But I like, if in case I get ill, I prefer to be on the aisle for easy access to the restroom and not feeling locked in if somebody's eating something on a big, depending on whether you're in a big jet with wide banks or in a smaller one with three. But I prefer the aisle to not get locked in next to someone's food. But that's me. And somebody else may say I like the window because I feel a little more in control. So I don't think it's a big point.
I want my window when I'm on the red eye, right?
Yeah.
So I can lean my head on my pillow. Yeah, exactly.
You can snooze.
Otherwise,
you'd be surprised what residue is.
Right?
Yeah.
All right. So what is your one snack that you pack for a flight? What's the first snack you pack to take on a flight?
Me? I pack
both.
Okay, well, Lianne goes more the non-perishable route, I think. I like to take a fresh deli sandwich from the places that I know that are safe and I can get served safely and have something like that, because it could be anything, but the idea is that it's something substantial, because it's going to have to hold you often for several hours.
Yep. Lianne, what's your snack?
It's definitely cereal or a granola bar or some sort of chip or, something he likes. And in fact, when we went to Africa, he was younger, so it was a little easier, I would say. But I didn't want him to feel bad about not having the meal. And one of the things we don't have a lot of in our house is sugar cereal. So I picked one of the snacks that are safe, but that are kind of junky, that we don't have every day. So it almost was like a treat. So I think for parents and children, especially if you're a house that, and I think most people don't want to shove junk all day. And it's some of a treat to have some of those allergy safe yet not necessarily healthy snacks. I mean, I think there's something to consider there, especially if you're traveling with children and you don't want them to be like upset that their brother, he couldn't have cared what we were eating. He got his Cocoa Pebbles. And we got milk.
All right. Yep. So you can have cereal. Yeah, that works. And a spoon, right? Bring your own spoon for that case.
Yeah.
Well, ladies, thank you so much. I really, really appreciate it. And anybody who's listening, if you want to connect, both Lianne and Gwen are quite active on LinkedIn. So you can find them easily there. And where's the one with Gwen's name on there? There that is. So find them there, but also just make sure you're looking at this guide. It's very, very comprehensive. It's very well done. Thank you both very much for doing all of that work and being a bulldog in your phone calls.
And follow the links within the guide to some of the articles.
Yes. Yeah. Yes, definitely. Yeah, you have a plethora
so
of articles on there with lots of great information. You're welcome, Gwen. Thank
Tracy,
you.
great to talk
to you. Thank you for helping create this life-saving information.
Yeah, it is 100% life-saving information. All right, everybody, that is it for today and this week. There was 2 episodes this week. Next week, we're talking about food waste, again, surplus food and how to protect it. So, and serve people. Yes, exactly. Until then, stay safe and eat well. And ladies, stay on with me for just a second. All right, thanks, everybody.